I am Isaiah Covington. I'm 70 years old. I was standing in the intensive care unit, hidden behind a sterile blue curtain, when a nurse I barely knew grabbed my arm. She squeezed it hard. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Shh! Don't make a sound," she whispered, her voice urgent. "Trust me and watch." I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Through the gap in the curtain, I watched as my son-in-law, Greg, walked up to my daughter's hospital bed. My only child, Alicia, my little girl. She was lying there, hooked up to a dozen machines, supposedly deep in a coma after a terrible car accident. I watched Greg look around to make sure the hallway was empty, and then I watched him smile. He pulled out his phone. "It's done," he whispered into it. He bought the whole story. And then, the moment that broke my world, I watched my daughter, my comatose daughter, open her eyes. She looked tired, but she was awake, and she was smiling back at him. "Did the old man sell the house yet?" she asked. My vision blurred. The room started spinning. I think that's when I fainted. My son-in-law and my daughter thought they were smart. They thought they were dealing with a confused, grieving, broke old man. They didn't know that old man had a secret of his own, a secret worth $2. $2 million. That night, from my own hospital bed, I made one phone call and set a trap that would tear their entire greedy world apart. It all started last Tuesday. The high-pitched hiss of the arc welder was the only music in my old workshop. For 45 years, that sound had been my life. My name is Isaiah Covington. I'm 70 years old. This workshop is my sanctuary. It's here in Crenshaw, Los Angeles, right behind the house I built with my own 2 hands. The smell of ozone and hot metal is the only perfume I've ever cared for. I lifted my welding mask. The sudden light stung my eyes. The air was thick with dust motes dancing in the California sun. I was working on a small metal sculpture of a bird, a gift for my daughter, Alicia. It was just something to keep my hands busy. My hands are rough, scarred from decades of work, but they're honest hands. They built a life. I put the welder down and walked over to my workbench, cluttered with tools and memories. Tacked to the wall was a pile of papers I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Medical bills, final notices, receipts from the last year of my wife Mildred's life. Mildred, she was the light of this house. Cancer took her from me 2 years ago, but the cost stays. We weren't rich, not by a long shot, but we lived simply. We believed in saving and building, not in showing off. Those last 12 months of experimental treatments, of specialized care, of desperate, fading hope, they drained us. They drained almost everything. I looked at the bank statement again. The savings account we'd spent 40 years building was just a shadow of what it had been. I wasn't broke, not yet. I still had the house, paid in full. I had this workshop and my small Social Security check. It was enough for me. I don't need much. But Mildred, I would have sold the world. I would have sold my soul, just to give her one more day. I sighed, pushing the papers aside. My daughter Alicia worried about me, or at least that's what she said. She and her husband Greg were always suggesting I sell the house. "It's just too big for one man, Dad," she'd say over Sunday dinner. Greg, my son-in-law, was a different story. He's a white fellow, a smooth talker, calls himself a financial consultant, always dressed sharp, but his eyes were too hungry. He'd look at my workshop not as a place where I built things, but as a piece of property. "This land, Isaiah," he'd say, "this land in the middle of LA is a gold mine. You're sitting on a fortune." I always brushed it off. What did he know about the sweat I'd poured into this concrete floor? What did he know about the life Mildred and I built here? He only saw dollar signs. I saw a home. I was about to pick up the welder again to finish the wing on that little bird when my old flip phone buzzed on the bench. It vibrated against a stray wrench, making a sound like an angry rattlesnake. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and picked it up. The caller ID read Greg. I frowned. Greg never called unless he wanted something. "Hello," I said, my voice rough from the welding fumes. Silence. Then a sound that wasn't a word, a sob, a desperate choking sound. "Greg, what is it? What's wrong?" "Dad?" His voice was broken, hysterical. I'd never heard him like this. My stomach turned to ice. "Dad, you need to get to St. Jude's Hospital right now." My breath caught in my throat. "What? What happened? Is it Alicia? Is it my daughter?" "It's Alicia," he wailed, and the sound cut right through me. There was a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. She's God, Dad, she's in a coma. The world went silent. The high-pitched ringing in my ears from the welder was gone, replaced by a deafening hollow roar. The heavy steel wrench I'd been holding slipped from my hand. It hit the concrete floor with a loud, final clang, but I barely heard it. Coma. The word echoed in the empty workshop. My little girl, my Alicia, the one I'd taught to ride a bike right outside this very door. The one who used to fall asleep on my chest while I watched the Lakers. How bad? I managed to whisper, my throat tight as a vice. Bad, Greg choked out. They said she has head trauma. They're doing surgery. Please, Dad, just hurry. The line clicked dead. I stood there frozen, staring at the phone. My legs felt like lead. My honest, scarred hands were trembling so hard I couldn't even put the phone back in my pocket. I ripped off my welding apron, grabbed my keys, and I ran. I ran out of the sanctuary that had just become a tomb and raced toward the nightmare waiting for me. I didn't park the truck. I abandoned it. The tires squealed against the curb of the emergency bay, and I was out and running before the engine even stopped ticking. I ran through those automatic doors, and the smell hit me, a smell you never forget. Antiseptic, bleach, floor wax, and something else. The cold, sterile smell of fear. My heart was a heavy, dull hammer in my chest. I followed the glowing blue signs. ICU, Intensive Care Unit. Each letter was a spike in my heart. And then I saw him. Greg. He was slumped in one of those bright orange plastic chairs, the kind designed to be impossible to rest in. He looked the part. His expensive suit jacket was rumpled. His usually perfect sandy blonde hair was a mess. He had his head in his hands, rocking back and forth. He looked exactly like a man destroyed by grief. Greg, I shouted. My voice sounded wrong, like gravel. He snapped his head up. His eyes were red and watery. Dad, he choked out and scrambled up from the chair and rushed over to me. He grabbed me. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. It felt wrong. His hug was strong, almost frantic, but it was cold. There was no warmth in it. Thank God you're here. He sobbed into the shoulder of my old work shirt. Oh God, Dad. It's so bad. Where is she? I said, my voice like stone. I tried to push past him toward the heavy double doors that said ICU. I need to see my girl. He held on to me, blocking my path. Wait, Dad. Wait. The doctor just talked to me. What did he say? Tell me what he said. Greg finally let go, stepping back to wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. It was a drunk driver, he said, his voice cracking. On La Brea. Flew right through a red light, hit her side of the car, just T-boned her. He looked down at the polished floor. She has severe head trauma. They had to do surgery, a craniotomy, that's what they called it, to relieve the pressure on her brain. The words were just sounds. They didn't make sense. Surgery. Brain trauma. This was my Alicia, my little girl, the one who was scared of roller coasters, the one I taught to weld when she was 15. Is she going to be okay? Greg shook his head slowly. He couldn't meet my eyes. They don't know, Dad. They just don't know. She's in a coma. She's stable, but she's not waking up. I have to see her now. I started for the doors again. This time, Greg put his hand flat on my chest. It was a gentle push, but it was a push. It stopped me. Dad, wait. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Get out of my way, Greg. That is my daughter. I know, he said, trying to be calming. I know, but the doctor was very, very clear. Because of the brain swelling, they're limiting visitation strictly to immediate next of kin. I'm her husband, so they let me in. I was just in there with her. It sounded logical. It sounded reasonable. I was just the father. He was the husband. In the eyes of the hospital, he was the one in charge, the decision maker. I felt completely helpless. My feet felt nailed to that linoleum floor. Look, Greg said, his voice soft again, like he was talking to a child. You look terrible. You're shaking. Why don't you sit down right here? I'm going to run down to the cafeteria. I'm going to get you a hot cup of coffee. I'll be right back. I promise I'll talk to the head nurse again, see if we can get you in. Just wait here, okay? I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. I didn't know what else to do. I sank into that cold orange chair, the plastic biting into my back. I watched my son-in-law, the smooth talker, the financial consultant, walk away down the hall. He was controlling this. He was controlling me. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time had stopped. The air hummed with the sound of vending machines and distant quiet beeps. Then the doors to the ICU opened. A nurse walked out. She was an African-American woman, strong-looking, maybe in her mid-40s. She wore bright blue scrubs and had a no-nonsense look on her face. She walked right past me, then stopped. She froze slowly, turned around, and stared at me. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but like she was trying to place me. "Wait a minute," she said, her voice low. She walked closer. Are you Mr. Covington? Isaiah Covington from the workshop over on Crenshaw?" I looked up, surprised that anyone here would know my name. "Yes, that's me." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I thought so. You probably don't remember me. My name is Tiana. Tiana Johnson. My father was Joe Johnson. He worked for you back in the 90 seconds. He was your apprentice. Joe Johnson. Of course. Big Joe. A good man. A hard worker. Gone too young." "I remember Joe," I said, and my voice was thick. "He was a fine man, one of the best. I was so sorry to hear he passed. He always said you were a good man, Mr. Covington," Tiana said. "He always told me that Isaiah, he's tough as nails, but he's always fair. He said you paid him a living wage when nobody else would." She looked at the ICU doors, then back at me. Her professional, friendly face just evaporated. "Your daughter, Alicia, she's the one who came in from the accident?" "Yes," I said, standing up. The single word was all I could manage. "My girl. Tiana, please. How is she? They won't let me see her." Tiana's face hardened. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a vice. She looked left, looked right. The hallway was empty except for us and a janitor mopping far down the hall. She pulled me a few feet away into the alcove by the water fountain, out of sight. "Mr. Covington," she whispered, her voice shaking, urgent. "I could lose my job for this. I could lose my license. But my daddy always said you were a good man, and I have to honor him." "What is it?" I whispered back. "Tiana, you're scaring me. Please, just tell me." "Something's wrong," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Something is not right with this whole situation. The story doesn't add up." "What do you mean, the drunk driver?" She cut me off. "There was no drunk driver," she whispered fiercely. "The paramedics' report said single-car accident. No other vehicle involved. And her injuries, they don't look right for what they're saying. And that Dr. Allen, he's too close to your son-in-law. They're thick as thieves." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying don't trust anything you hear from them. Not from your son-in-law. Not from Dr. Allen." I heard the squeak of shoes on linoleum. Greg was coming back. Tiana pushed me back toward the chairs. "Listen to me," she said, her voice dropping even lower, so low I could barely hear it. "When he comes back, you tell him you need to go into that room. You are her father. You demand it. When you get inside, find me. I'll be in there. And no matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you stay silent. Trust me, Mr. Covington. Just trust me. And watch." Greg came back down the hall, balancing 2 styrofoam cups. He held one out to me. "Here you go, Dad. Black, just how you like it." I didn't take it. I just looked at his hand, then at his face. "I'm going in, Greg." His smile faltered. "Dad, like I said, the doctor." "I don't care what the doctor said." I cut him off. My voice was low, hard, the voice I used in the workshop when an apprentice was about to make a dangerous mistake. "That is my blood in there. That is my child. I'm going to see my daughter now." Greg looked flustered. He was used to being in control, to being the smooth talker. He wasn't used to me, the quiet old man, giving an order. "Isaiah, I really don't think." "You don't think?" I repeated. "I know. I am her father. I am going in. You can either walk in with me, or you can watch me walk in alone." He stared at me for a long second, his eyes calculating. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He sighed, rubbing his forehead in fake exhaustion. "Okay, Dad. Okay, you're right. You should see her. Just be prepared. It's not pretty." He swiped his access card and pushed open the heavy double doors. The sudden whoosh of the ICU doors closing behind me cut off all sound from the hallway. Now there was only the steady, rhythmic beeping of machines. The air was cold, sterile, and there she was, my Alicia, lying in the center of a spider's web of tubes and wires. Her face was pale. A small white bandage was taped to her temple. My heart broke all over again. I felt my legs weaken. I wanted to rush to her side, to hold her hand, to tell her I was here. But then I saw Tiana. She was on the far side of the room, pretending to check a monitor. As soon as Greg turned his back to speak to another nurse, Tiana's eyes met mine. They were wide, urgent. She didn't speak. She just gestured a sharp, frantic motion with her head toward a storage alcove in the corner, hidden by a heavy floor-to-ceiling blue curtain. I hesitated. What was this? What was she asking me to do? She gestured again, more fiercely, her face tight with panic. Hide. Now. I looked at Greg. He was still distracted. I took 3 quick, silent steps back and slipped behind the heavy curtain. It smelled like disinfectant and plastic. I was in the dark, standing next to a tall rolling cart of medical supplies. I held my breath. The tension was so thick I could barely swallow. The door to the room hissed open and clicked shut. I heard Greg's footsteps on the tile floor. She's asleep, he said clearly, talking to the other nurse. Her father was just here. Poor guy. He's completely devastated. I'll sit with her for a minute. I heard the other nurse murmur something, and then the door hissed open and closed again. We were alone. Just Greg, Alicia, and me hidden in the shadows. I peeked through the tiny gap where the curtain met the wall. I saw Greg walk over to the window, look out into the night, and stretch his arms over his head like a man finishing a long day at work. He rolled his neck, then turned around. He looked at Alicia's bed and smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't a hopeful smile. It was a satisfied smile, a grin. He pulled out his phone and started texting. "It's done," I heard him whisper to himself. He bought the whole story. Hook, line, and sinker. He chuckled, a low, ugly sound that didn't belong in this room. He walked over to the bed, looked down at my daughter's face, and spoke in a normal voice. "Okay, baby. Coast is clear. You can stop acting for a minute." My blood turned to ice. My mind screamed, "What?" And then it happened. Alicia, my daughter, the girl in the coma, her eyelids fluttered, and she opened her eyes. She wasn't just awake. She was alert. She looked right at Greg and smiled. "Finally," she said. Her voice was groggy, thick with medication, but it was her voice. "I hate this. My back is killing me." "Did he buy it?" "Like a cheap suit," Greg said. He actually laughed. "The old man is so torn up he's barely functioning. That doctor, Alan, is a genius. This sedative mix is perfect. You look completely gone to the world." I couldn't breathe. I felt the air leave my lungs. This was not real. This was a nightmare. "Good," Alicia said. She tried to sit up, but Greg pushed her gently back down. "Not yet. Not yet. Just stay down. We have to keep this up. Now, the money. Tell me about the money." "It's beautiful," Greg said, pulling a chair close to her bed. "The insurance payout for the accident is an easy $100,000, just for the car and the initial trauma." $100,000, she repeated, tasting the words. "That's a start, but it's not enough, Greg. It's not enough to fix your gambling debts." "I know, baby. That's just phase 1, he said, leaning in close. "Phase 2 is the masterpiece. Doctor, Alan is going to discover a complication, a rare brain bleed. It requires a new experimental surgery. A surgery, unfortunately, the insurance won't cover." Alicia's eyes lit up. "The deposit for this life-saving surgery is $250,000. Cash up front? $250,000. I didn't have that. They knew I didn't have that. He doesn't have that kind of cash, Greg," Alicia said, frowning. "Exactly," Greg said, his smile turning predatory. "But he has a house, and he has that workshop, that land in Crenshaw. He'll have to sell. He'll sign over anything to save his little girl. He'll liquidate everything he owns." The words hit me harder than a fist. "My house, my workshop, Mildred's home. And after he signs?" Alicia asked. "We can't keep this coma up forever." Greg's smile vanished. He looked cold. "After he signs the papers, tragically you'll have a complication. Your vital signs will drop. We'll have to pull the plug." He said it so easily. "It will be a heartbreaking tragedy. I'll be the grieving husband. He'll be the devastated father. And we will be the ones left to manage his affairs. He'll be so broken he won't even notice when we put him in a nice cheap nursing home. And everything will be ours." I couldn't feel my legs. The blood was roaring in my ears so loudly I could barely hear them. My own daughter planning to pull the plug on herself, planning to put me in a home, stealing my life, my home, my future, all for money. I tried to back away, to get out, to run, but I was trapped behind the curtain. I felt dizzy. The room was spinning. I put my hand out to steady myself against the wall, but I missed. My trembling hand hit the metal rolling cart. A small kidney dish and a pair of scissors clattered against each other. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet of that room it sounded like a gunshot. Clang. Greg and Alicia froze. Their heads snapped toward the curtain. "What was that?" Greg hissed. "Who's there?" He moved toward me. There was nowhere to go. I stumbled forward, pushing through the heavy blue curtain, out into the bright light of the room. I stood there, shaking, staring at them. Greg's face was a mask of pure, absolute shock. But Alicia, her face was worse. It wasn't just shock. It was the face of a cornered animal. We locked eyes. Her sitting up in her hospital bed, very much awake. Me, the confused old man who had just heard everything. "Dad," she screamed. It was a sound of pure terror. "Dad." I tried to say her name. I tried to ask her why, but no sound came out. My chest seized. The room twisted. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was my daughter's horrified face as I collapsed lifeless onto the cold tile floor. I woke up to the smell of rubbing alcohol. It was sharp, and it pulled me back from the darkness. I was in a different room, a private room. It was quiet. The frantic beeping was gone. My body ached, but the worst ache was in my chest, a deep, hollow pain where my heart used to be. "He's waking up." It was Tiana's voice. I blinked. She was standing by the window, her arms crossed. She looked worried, but also fierce. "Mr. Covington, can you hear me, Isaiah?" I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "Alicia," I croaked. She was. "Don't talk," Tiana said, moving quickly to the bed. "Not yet. You're safe right now." "But Greg, they think you had a breakdown," she said, her voice low and fast. "I told them when you collapsed it was a psychotic break, a grief-induced hallucination. I told them you were screaming that Alicia was awake, that she was talking. I told them you were completely delusional." I stared at her. They believed you?" "Of course they did," Tiana said, a grim look on her face. "It's exactly what they wanted to believe, that you're just a confused old man losing his mind. It plays right into their hands. They know I saw them. They know you think you saw them." Tiana corrected me. I made sure of it. "I told Greg and that snake doctor, Alan, that this kind of paranoid episode is common in older patients under extreme stress. I told them you're a danger to yourself." I didn't understand. "Why? Why tell them that?" "Because," she said, leaning in close, "it buys us time. They feel safe right now. They think they're in control. They think you're broken. And we need them to think that." "Tiana, why are you doing this? You're risking everything." She pulled the chair closer to my bed. "I told you my daddy Joe Johnson respected you, but it's more than that. I've been a nurse in this ICU for 15 years. I know Dr. Allen. I've seen him bend the rules for rich patients. But this is different." She looked at the door, making sure it was closed. "I've suspected something was wrong with your son-in-law for months. He's too smooth. He asks too many questions about hospital protocols, about end-of-life procedures. He never seemed like a grieving husband. He seemed like a man waiting for a paycheck. And, Alicia," I whispered. "My own girl." Tiana's face softened for just a second. That's the part I didn't see coming. But when they brought her in, the accident report was clean, single car, no skid marks, and her injuries didn't match. Then Dr. Allen immediately put her on a heavy sedative protocol to prevent swelling. But it was too much. Way too much. He wasn't trying to heal her. He was trying to hide her. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs and pulled out a tiny black object, no bigger than my thumbnail, a USB flash drive. So I did something. The night before you came, when Alan was off shift, I went into her room. I put a small audio recorder under her bed, taped to the frame. I just had a feeling. I figured I'd catch Alan saying something stupid. She pressed the USB into my palm. Her hand was warm. I never imagined I'd catch this. It's all on here, Isaiah. Everything they said, the plan, the money, the nursing home, everything. I stared at the small piece of plastic. It felt heavier than a block of steel. It was the proof. It was the truth. I clutched the USB. "We have to go to the police right now." "No," Tiana said, shaking her head. "Not yet. You're in a hospital. You just had a psychotic break. Who do you think they'll believe? The grieving, hysterical old man? Or the concerned family and their high-paid doctor?" She was right. The trap wasn't just for me. It was for anyone I tried to tell. They know you know, Isaiah, she said, her voice hardening. Even if they think you're crazy, you are now a threat, a loose end. Their plan just got messy. What do you mean? I mean they can't just wait for you to sell the house anymore. They have to silence you, and fast. They're not just going to suggest a nursing home now. They are going to force it. They will go to a judge. They will use your hallucination today as proof. They will get an emergency conservatorship. They will paint you as a confused, senile old man who imagined his daughter was awake. The walls started closing in. They can do that? They can, and they will, Tiana said. They have a corrupt doctor. They have your loving son-in-law. They have your devoted daughter. And you're just the grieving father who lost his mind. They will lock you away, take control of your finances, sell your property, and you will die in a home screaming the truth to walls that won't listen. I felt the panic rising again, cold and sharp. So what do I do? I'm trapped. No, you're not, Tiana said. You're angry, and you're smart. My daddy said you were the smartest man he ever knew. You need a lawyer, not just any lawyer. You need a shark, and you need to call him right now while they still think you're sedated. I nodded. There's one person. My oldest friend, Larry, Lawrence Hayes. Good. Use my phone, Tiana said, handing me her personal cell. They might be monitoring yours. Tell him to get here. Tell him it's life and death. I dialed the number from memory. It rang twice. Hayes Legal, a gruff voice answered. Larry, I whispered, my voice thick. It's Isaiah. Isaiah Covington. Isaiah, what in God's name? I heard about Alicia. I'm so sorry, man. Are you? Larry, shut up and listen to me, I interrupted. I'm at St. Jude's. Room 412. I'm in trouble. Deep trouble. My daughter, she's not in a coma. It's a lie. They're trying to steal everything. There was a dead silence on the line. Larry was old school. He didn't waste time on disbelief. How bad is it, Isaiah? They're trying to have me declared incompetent. They think I'm broke. They think they can lock me away. I'm on my way, Larry said. Don't say another word to anyone. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up. Tiana took the phone back. Good. He sounds fast. Now you rest. When your family comes back in, you are broken. You are confused. You don't remember anything. You just cry for Mildred. You understand? You give them the performance of your life. An hour later, Lawrence Hayes walked in. He looked like he'd been retired for 10 years, but his suit was sharp and his eyes were like tacks. He's 68, but he moves like he's 40. Tiana, I said weakly, this is my lawyer. Can we have privacy? Tiana nodded. I'll be right outside. I'll make sure no one bothers you. The door closed. Larry looked at me. Okay, Isaiah. Talk, and don't leave out a single detail. I told him everything. The phone call, Tiana's warning, the scene behind the curtain, the plan to steal my house, the USB. Larry listened, his face getting darker and darker. The ungrateful bastards, he finally growled. Okay, this is bad. They have a corrupt doctor. They have your daughter's testimony. It's he said, she said, against a grieving old man. They will try to get a judge to declare you incompetent. But I have the recording, Larry, which they will say you faked or that you recorded under duress. They'll say you're paranoid. I looked at the floor. He was right. It was still my word against theirs. They think I'm broke, Larry, I said quietly. They think all I have is the house and the workshop. They think they're fighting over scraps. They're doing all this for $250,000. Larry looked confused. But the house and workshop are all you have, aren't they? Mildred's illness, it took everything, didn't it? I looked my oldest friend in the eye. That's what I let everyone believe, Larry. That's what I let my own daughter believe. Mildred and I, we weren't stupid. We lived simply. We drove old trucks. We saved. What are you saying, Isaiah? I'm saying, I said, reaching under my hospital gown to the money belt I've worn every day since Mildred died, that they think they're stealing from a poor man. I pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, a bank statement. They have no idea, I whispered, about the Covington Mildred Trust Fund. Larry took the paper. His eyes scanned the lines. His jaw dropped. $2. $2 million? He breathed. Isaiah, you've been sitting on $2. $2 million. Blue chip stocks, I said. IBM, Coca-Cola, things that don't disappear. Mildred was smart. She said, never let your children know. Let them build their own lives. Money just poisons things. Larry looked at the paper, then at me, and a slow smile spread across his face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "Oh, Isaiah," he said, folding the paper and handing it back to me. "They're not just trying to steal from a poor old man." He started to laugh. "They're trying to declare a multimillionaire incompetent. They're not just stupid," Larry said. "They're sloppy. And we are going to use their greed to crucify them. Now listen to me. Here is exactly what you are going to do." The door to my room opened slowly. I flinched, pulling the thin hospital blanket up to my chin. Tiana came in first. She was all business, checking the IV drip I wasn't really using. She leaned in close, pretending to adjust my pillow. "He's coming," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Doctor, Allen is with him. They're going to try to test you, to see what you remember. Remember what Larry said. You're not a man who uncovered a plot. You're a broken-hearted father who had a bad dream. You're confused. You're weak. Now play the part." She moved away just as the door swung open again. Greg entered, and my stomach tightened. He had managed to make himself look even more worried than before. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he'd been crying. And right behind him was the man Tiana had warned me about, Dr. Allen. He was tall, silver-haired, with a clipboard held to his chest like a shield. He had the kind of calm, reassuring face that made you want to trust him, and that made him 1,000 times more dangerous. "Dad," Greg said, his voice soft, full of fake concern. "Oh, thank God you're awake. You really scared us." He rushed to my bedside. "Doctor." Allen stood back near the door, arms crossed, just watching me, studying me. I shrank back from Greg's touch. "Greg, what happened?" I had a terrible dream. I watched Greg's eyes. I saw it a tiny, almost invisible flash of relief. He thought I didn't remember. "It wasn't a dream, Dad," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to take my hand. "You had a bit of an episode. You were in the ICU waiting room, and you just collapsed. You've been in and out for hours." The lie was so smooth, so practiced. "No," I said, letting my voice tremble. "No, not in the hall. I was in Alicia's room. I saw her. Greg, I saw her." She opened her eyes. She was awake. She was talking to you. Greg's face became a perfect mask of pity. He looked back at Dr. Allen, a silent, rehearsed cue. Dr. Allen stepped forward, his voice as smooth as polished wood. "Mr. Covington, I'm Dr. Allen. I'm overseeing your daughter's care. What you experienced was a profound, grief-induced hallucination." "A hallucination?" I whispered. "Yes," the doctor said, looking at his chart. "It's quite common. Your daughter has not, and I repeat, not woken up. She remains in a deep, critical coma. The shock of seeing her combined with your natural exhaustion caused your mind to create a scenario you desperately wanted to see. A trick of the mind." I stared at him, then back at Greg. No, it was real. I saw her. I heard her. She was talking about money, about the house. Greg closed his eyes and shook his head as if my words were physically hurting him. "Dad, please stop," he begged. "You were screaming when you collapsed. You were yelling about money and nursing homes. You were completely delusional. You scared the nurses. Tiana had to give you a sedative. It was awful to see you like that. The lie was perfect. They were even using Tiana's name, my one ally, to validate their story. They had an answer for everything. They were good at this. They were professionals." I let go of his shirt. I let my shoulders slump. I looked at my old, scarred hands lying on the white hospital sheet. I let a real tear of rage roll down my cheek. I let them see it. I let them think it was a tear of sorrow. "Delusional?" I whispered, my voice breaking. I was so sure. It felt so real. I looked up at Greg, my eyes wide and pleading. "Oh God, Greg, am I going crazy?" The relief on Greg's face was so strong he almost smiled. He caught himself, and his expression melted back into one of deep, loving concern. He put his arms around me. "No, Dad," he said, hugging me. No, you're not crazy. You're just grieving. You're exhausted. It's just too much for one person to handle. But that's why I'm here, okay? I'm here. I'll take care of everything for you. For Alicia." I let myself sob into his shoulder, a dry, racking sob that was half real and half performance. "I'm so confused, Greg. I don't know what to do." "That's just it, Dad," he said, pulling back to look me in the eyes. You don't have to do anything. You just have to rest. You have to let me take the burden. I'll handle all the paperwork. I'll handle everything. I looked up at him, my eyes shining with fake, desperate gratitude, the gratitude of a drowning man. You'd do that for me, son? Of course, Dad, he said, patting my arm. Your family. Now you get some rest. I'll be back in a little while. I'm going to handle all the paperwork. He and Dr. Allen left the room. The performance was over. An hour later, Greg returned, this time alone. The concerned son was gone. Now he was the efficient businessman. He was carrying a sleek black briefcase. Dad, you feeling a little more clear-headed? He asked, pulling a chair right up to the bed. I nodded weakly. A little. Just tired. So very tired, son. I know. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents and a pen. His voice was all business, but he kept a thin layer of sympathy over it like cheap varnish. Dad, I know this is a terrible time, the worst time. But the hospital, they're not going to wait. The bills for Alicia's surgery and this new experimental treatment, Dr. Bill Allen wants to try, they're astronomical. They need a deposit now. I played my part. I looked confused. Bills. Money. Oh Lord, I don't know where anything is. Mildred always handled the money. I know, Dad. I know, he said, his voice dripping with patience. And that's why I'm here. I had my lawyer draft these. It's just a simple power of attorney, a financial power of attorney. He spread the papers on the bed tray in front of me. It's just so I can talk to your bank for you, so I can access the funds to pay the hospital, so I can take charge of selling the workshop to cover the costs. I stared at the papers, my eyes intentionally unfocused. Sell the workshop? My shop? Greg's face tightened with that fake sympathy again. It's the only way, Dad. It's the only way we can afford this. It's for Alicia. We have to do it for her. It's just a piece of land. It's just bricks and steel. It's not worth her life, is it? I shook my head, letting another tear fall. No, of course not. Anything for my girl. Anything. He clicked the pen and handed it to me. It's just a few signatures, Dad. Right here, and one on the last page. This just lets me take the burden off your shoulders. You won't have to worry about another thing. I'll handle it all. My hand trembled as I took the pen. I looked at the signature line. I looked up at Greg, at this monster who was my son-in-law. You're a good son, Greg. A good man. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of your crazy old father-in-law. I scribbled my name. I didn't just sign it. I made it look weak, shaky, the signature of a man who was barely holding on. Greg's face was a perfect mask of love, but his eyes were shining. They were triumphant. He quickly, almost too quickly, gathered the documents, neatly stacking them and sliding them back into his briefcase. He snapped it shut. You did the right thing, Dad. The right thing. You're a good man, he said, standing up. Now, you get some sleep. I'm going to go to the bank right now. I'm going to fix everything. I'll take care of Alicia. I promise. He patted my shoulder. The touch made my skin crawl. He walked out of the room, a man who had just won the lottery. I waited. I counted to 30. The moment the door clicked shut, my eyes snapped open. The weakness was gone. The confusion was gone. The tears dried instantly. I sat up in the bed, my back straight. I reached under the thin hospital pillow and pulled out the small, disposable burner phone Tiana had smuggled in for me. I dialed Larry's number. He took it, I said. My voice was no longer the reedy whisper of a broken old man. It was cold. It was hard. It was the voice of Isaiah Covington. He took the bait. The fish is on the line. I heard Larry's gruff voice on the other end. He's on the line. Good. That's excellent, Isaiah. Now listen to me. The trap is set. What do you mean? I mean, Larry said, and I could almost hear the grin in his voice, that I just got off the phone with Judge Miller. I filed an emergency injunction an hour ago, citing potential elder fraud and undue influence. I didn't even have to use your recording yet. All I needed was a sworn affidavit from your nurse, Tiana Johnson, stating that Dr. Allen's treatment protocol for your daughter was medically unnecessary and designed to deceive you. So the papers he's holding in his greedy hands, aren't worth the paper they're printed on. Larry finished for me. I already notified your bank and the brokerage firm. The moment he walks in there and tries to use that power of attorney, he's not going to get a check. He's going to hit a legal brick wall. All your assets, every last cent of that $2. 2 million are frozen, pending a full competency hearing. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. So, what do I do now? Now? Larry's voice turned to cold steel. Now you keep playing the part. He's going to fail. And when he fails, he's not going to blame himself. He's going to blame you. He's going to think the confused old man screwed up the paperwork somehow. He's going to come back, Isaiah, and he's going to be furious. I'll be ready, I said. No, Larry corrected me. You won't be ready. You will be weak. You will be confused. You will be terrified. You will be the senile old fool they think you are. Let him get angry. Let him yell. Let him make all the mistakes. Tiana is your only protection in there. I'm putting a team together. I'll be there as soon as he shows his hand. Just hold on, old friend. The line clicked dead. The waiting was the hardest part. Hours passed. They brought me dinner, some kind of gray meat and green beans. I couldn't eat. I just stared at the television, not seeing it. Every time the door to my room hissed open, my heart leaped into my throat. But it was just a nurse checking my blood pressure, or an orderly taking my tray. I was a prisoner in my own trap. I was bait. I closed my eyes, and all I could see was Alicia, my little girl. I remembered teaching her how to weld, the way her face lit up behind the mask when she made her first clean bead. She was 10 years old. I'm just like you, Daddy, she'd shouted. Where did she go? Where did my little girl go? When did she become this monster, this stranger who looked at me and only saw an obstacle? The door hissed open again. It was Tiana doing her late-night rounds. She didn't look at me. She just bustled around, checking the monitor, writing on my chart. He's been at the bank, she whispered, her back to the door. I just saw him in the main lobby. He was on his phone. He was screaming. His face was bright red. I heard him yelling about frozen accounts and legal nonsense. He looked like he was about to have a stroke. So he knows. He knows something is wrong, she said. He and Dr. Allen were just in Alicia's room. I was walking by. They were arguing loudly. I heard Greg shout, he must have done something. The old fool must have screwed it up. A cold dread washed over me. He's coming back. Tiana finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were hard. He's coming, she said. And he is not coming back as the concerned son. He is coming back as the man who just lost $250,000, and he is going to take it out on you. Be ready, Mr. Covington. She left the room. I was alone. The minutes stretched into an hour. The only sound was the faint hum of the hospital and the frantic beating of my own heart. Then the burner phone under my pillow vibrated. It wasn't a call from Larry. The screen was dark, an unknown number. My hand was shaking as I answered it. Hello, Dad. It was Greg. His voice was not the one I knew. The fake sympathy was gone. The feigned worry was gone. His voice was a low, cold animal growl, tight with a rage that was barely contained. You are a stupid old man. I played my part. I let my voice shake. Greg, son, what's wrong? Did you pay the bill? Is Alicia okay? Stop it, he hissed. Just stop playing dumb. The bank, the accounts are frozen. You signed the wrong papers. You must have hidden another account. You lied to me. I don't know what you mean, I stammered. I signed what you gave me. I'm so confused. Son, I want to help Alicia. You'd better get unconfused, he roared, and I heard a crash on his end like he'd thrown something. I am coming back to that hospital, and you are going to fix this. You are going to sign whatever I tell you to sign. You are going to give me that money. Do you understand me? The line clicked dead. He was on his way. I didn't panic. The fear was gone. It was replaced by something cold, something hard, something that felt like the steel I used to weld. My hand was perfectly steady as I picked up the burner phone and dialed Larry's number. Larry, it's time. He's on his way up, I said. And he's angry. Bring the party. I didn't have to wait long. Maybe an hour later the door hissed open again. This time Greg came in alone. The concerned son act was gone. He looked deranged. His face was a blotchy, furious red. His expensive suit jacket was wrinkled. His tie was ripped loose at the collar, and his eyes were wild. You? He roared. He didn't even say my name. He just pointed a shaking finger at me. You! He was holding the stack of papers I had signed the useless power of attorney. He marched to the bed and threw them. He threw the entire stack right at my chest. Papers scattered across the thin hospital blanket, onto my lap, onto the floor. What did you do? He screamed. The sound bounced off the hard walls of the small room. What the hell did you do, you senile old fool? I flinched. I shrank back against the pillows, pulling the blanket up like a shield. I let my voice tremble. Greg, what's wrong? Did I sign them wrong? I'm so sorry. I was confused. Confused? He spat the word. You're not confused. You're playing me. You've been playing me this whole time. He grabbed the railing of my hospital bed and shook it. The whole frame rattled. I went to the bank, he yelled, his face inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath, the sour scent of his panic. I went to the brokerage firm frozen. Everything. Pending a competency hearing. Potential fraud. What did you tell them? I didn't tell them anything, I cried. And it was easy to cry because the rage I felt was so close to the surface it came out as tears. I just want to help Alicia. Please, Greg, don't be mad at me. I'll fix it. I'll sign whatever you want. You think I believe that? He sneered. You think I'm that stupid? All this time, sitting on millions. $2. 2 million. You let your own daughter believe you were poor. You let me believe it. I froze. My blood ran cold. How did he know? I didn't have to ask. He saw the look on my face. Oh yeah, he laughed. A horrible choking sound. I found out. When the bank manager told me the account was frozen, I demanded to know which account. He wouldn't tell me, so I called my lawyer. He's not as stupid as yours. He ran your name? The Covington Mildred Trust Fund. You've been lying to us for decades. He was pacing now like a caged tiger. We've been scrambling for $250,000. We've been risking everything for scraps while you were sitting on a mountain of gold. You just sat there and watched us. You watched your own daughter. She's my daughter, I yelled back. The fear suddenly gone, replaced by a white-hot anger. My daughter, the one you turned against me. The one I turned? Greg laughed. She hates you. She hates your cheap house, your cheap clothes, your sanctimonious work-hard attitude. She deserves that money. I deserve that money. He lunged forward, grabbing the front of my hospital gown. And you are going to give it to me. You are going to call your lawyer, and you are going to unfreeze those accounts, or I swear to God I will. You'll what, Mr. Reed? The new voice cut through the room like a razor. It was calm. It was deep. It was full of authority. Greg froze. His hand was still clenched in my gown. He turned his head slowly. Larry Hayes stood in the doorway. He wasn't alone. My old friend looked immaculate in his dark gray suit, holding his briefcase. Beside him stood Tiana, her arms crossed, her face like stone, and flanking them, filling the doorway, were two large men in the dark blue uniforms of hospital security. Greg let go of my gown as if it had suddenly caught fire. He stumbled back, his face draining of all color. Who the hell are you? He stammered. I, Larry said, taking a slow step into the room, am Lawrence Hayes. I am Mr. Covington's attorney. And you, Mr. Reed, just made a very serious mistake. This is a family matter, Greg said, trying to regain his composure. He straightened his tie. You have no right to be here. I am his power of attorney. I am in charge of his care. Is that so? Larry said, his voice dangerously smooth. He took another step. The security guards moved with him, positioning themselves on either side of Greg, cutting off any escape. You mean the power of attorney you had him sign under duress while he was heavily medicated, based on a fraudulent medical diagnosis? That power of attorney? Greg's eyes darted between the guards. He was trapped. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do, Larry said. He snapped his fingers. Tiana, who had been silent, stepped forward. Nurse Johnson, Larry said, his voice booming in the small room. Is this the man you saw verbally threatening and physically intimidating this patient, Mr. Covington? Tiana looked Greg dead in the eyes. Her voice was cold. Yes, sir. That's him. I also witnessed him conspiring with Dr. Allen to defraud this patient. You're lying, Greg screamed. She's lying. She's in on it with him. Lying, am I? Larry said. He placed his briefcase on the small table and clicked it open. He pulled out a sheath of papers. This, Mr. Reed, is a formal criminal complaint. It's already been filed with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. It names you, your wife Alicia Reed, and a Dr. Martin Allen. He threw the papers on the bed in front of Greg. It's a complaint for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted grand larceny, and most interestingly, elder abuse. That last one carries a very stiff penalty in the state of California. Greg just stared at the papers. This is junk. It's his word against mine. It's the word of a confused, senile old man. He's delusional. He admitted he was hallucinating. Did I, Greg? I spoke. My voice was no longer weak. It was hard. It was the voice of the man who ran a steel shop for 45 years. I sat up, pushing the blanket aside. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. Greg's eyes widened in genuine shock. He had only seen me as a weak, trembling old man in a hospital bed. He had never seen me on my feet. I am not a small man. I know everything, Greg, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I know about the drunk driver that never existed. I know about the single car accident that was self-inflicted. I know about the head trauma that was just a bump on the head. I know about the coma that was just a heavy dose of sedatives. You can't prove any of that, he whispered. I know about Dr. Allen, I continued, walking toward him. I know about the $20,000 you paid him to falsify her medical records. I know about the experimental surgery that was just a lie to steal my house. I know about the plan to pull the plug. I know about the plan to put me in a nursing home. Greg was shaking his head, backing away, but the security guards were right behind him. You're crazy, he stammered. You are crazy. It's all in your head. Is it? I said. I looked at Larry. Show him. Larry nodded. He pulled a small tablet from his briefcase. He tapped the screen. I believe you know this room, mister. Read, Larry said. It's your wife's ICU room from yesterday. Tiana took the tablet. She held it up right in front of Greg's face, and I heard it. The audio was crystal clear. Greg's voice. Okay, baby. Coast is clear. You can stop acting for a minute. Greg lunged for the tablet, but the security guards grabbed his arms, locking them behind his back. Alicia's voice. Did he buy it? Greg's voice. Like a cheap suit. The old man is so torn up he's barely functioning. Greg was struggling now, a desperate guttural sound rising in his throat. Alicia's voice. Good. Now the money. Tell me about the money. Greg's voice. The deposit for this life-saving surgery is $250,000 cash up front. Alicia's voice. He doesn't have that kind of cash. Greg's voice. Exactly. But he has a house, and he has that workshop. He'll have to sell. He'll liquidate everything he owns. Turn it off, Greg roared. He was a wild animal. He twisted violently, trying to break free from the guards. Turn that damn thing off. You recorded us, that's illegal. Not when it's documenting an act of crime. Mister, read, Larry said calmly, taking the tablet back from Tiana. And not when one-party Nurse Johnson was aware and facilitating the recording to prevent said crime. Greg's face was purple. The mask was completely gone. This was the real man, the hungry, greedy, cornered animal. You, he screamed at me. You old bastard. You set me up. You set us up. I'll kill you. He lunged forward again, dragging the two security guards with him. He was trying to get to me. Tiana stepped in front of me, protecting me. Mr. Reed, one of the guards said, applying pressure. Calm down now. Greg laughed a high-pitched, hysterical sound. My life is over. You've ruined me. You've ruined everything. He suddenly went limp. The guards, surprised by the sudden lack of resistance, loosened their grip for just a fraction of a second. It was all he needed. He ripped his right arm free, shoving one guard into the other. He spun around and bolted for the door. He didn't make it 2 steps. Larry Hayes, my 68-year-old lawyer, stuck out his expensive leather shoe. Greg, running full speed, hit the floor, face first. The sound of his nose breaking was a wet, satisfying crunch. He groaned, rolling over, clutching his face as blood poured between his fingers. The security guards were on him in an instant, pinning him to the floor. Get off me. He gurgled through the blood. He looked up, his eyes wild with panic, not at me, not at Larry, but at the door. Alicia, he screamed. The name echoed down the hospital corridor. Alicia, he knows everything. Run, run, Alicia, run. His screams were cut off as the guards hauled him to his feet and shoved him, bleeding and sobbing, out of the room toward the police officers Larry had waiting in the lobby. I just stood there. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. Larry walked over calmly, adjusting his tie. He looked at the blood on the floor, then at me. Well, he said, that's phase 1 handled. Phase 1? I asked. Larry smiled. Now, Isaiah, let's go wake up your daughter. The walk down the hall from my room to hers was the longest of my life. I could still hear Greg's muffled screams echoing from the elevator bank as the police took him away. The sound of his rage, his pathetic, bleeding defeat, bounced off the sterile walls. Larry walked beside me, his face set, his briefcase in hand. Tiana walked in front, her face grim. The two security guards walked behind. We were a procession. We were a funeral march. With every step, my hospital gown swishing around my legs, the anger in my chest burned hotter. It wasn't the explosive rage of Greg. It was something else, the cold, focused, white-hot flame I used at the workshop, the kind of fire that cuts steel. I thought about Alicia, my little girl. I thought about the lie she had told me that Greg had gambling debts. That was just another manipulation. This wasn't about his debts. This was about her greed. She wanted my money. She wanted my house. She wanted the life she felt I owed her. She had looked at my simple home, the home I raised her in, the home Mildred died in, and she had seen it as an inconvenience. She had looked at me, her father, and seen me as a broken-down old ATM. We reached her door, room 408. The sign on it still said, "Visitation restricted." Tiana used her access card. The lock beeped, and the door hissed open. And there she was, exactly as I had left her, lying perfectly still. The white sheet pulled up to her chest. The machines beeped their steady, fake rhythm around her. The small bandage was still perfectly placed on her temple. She was the very picture of a tragic victim, deep in a coma, a sleeping beauty. She was a very, very good actress. Larry, Tiana, and the guards filed in, standing by the door. They left the center of the room for me. This was my stage. This was my moment. I walked slowly toward the bed. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel confused. I felt 70 years old, and every single one of those years felt like a pound of iron in my fists. I stood over her, looking down at her face so peaceful, so innocent, so full of lies. "Alicia," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the beeping of the machines. She didn't move, not a flicker, not a breath. "Alicia," I said again, louder this time. "The performance is over. Get up." Nothing. She was committed to the lie. She was going to play this until the very end. Maybe she thought Greg had escaped. Maybe she thought she could still win, that she could just lie here until we all went away. I looked at Tiana. Tiana just nodded once. "Keep going." "Greg has been arrested, Alicia," I said, my voice flat and cold as a chisel. "He was just dragged out of my room, bleeding from a broken nose. He was screaming your name. He told you to run." I watched her face. I saw it. Her eyelids tightened, just for a fraction of a second. She was awake. She could hear me. "He's gone," I said, leaning in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper she would have to strain to hear. "Doctor, Alan is next. His career is over. And you are right here. The game is over, baby girl. I know everything. I know about the drunk driver that never existed. I know about the single car accident that was a lie. I know about the head trauma that was just a bump on the head. I know about the coma that was just a heavy dose of drugs." Still, she didn't move. She was holding on, clinging to the one lie she had left. If she didn't move, if she didn't speak, maybe she could pretend it never happened. "I know about the $250,000, Alicia," I said. "I know about the plan to sell my house. I know about the plan to put me in a nursing home. I know about the plan to pull the plug on yourself." I saw her jaw clench. "I was behind the curtain," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I could barely control. "I heard you ask Greg if I bought the story. I heard you call me the old man. I heard you laugh." A single tear, a single hot tear escaped her closed left eyelid and rolled down her temple, disappearing into her hair. She was crying, not because she was sorry, but because she was caught. "She's not going to give up," Tiana said, stepping forward. Her voice was pure business. "She's too deep in. She thinks if she just stays still, she can deny it all. She can pretend she was sedated the whole time. She's still my daughter," I found myself saying, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. "No, Mr. Covington," Tiana said, her voice firm but kind. "She stopped being your daughter when she planned to steal your home. Right now she is a suspect, and she is a patient under my care who is receiving medication. She does not need medication that is part of a criminal conspiracy." She walked past me over to the IV pole. "What are you doing?" I asked. Tiana didn't answer. She followed the clear tube from the sedative bag down to the port in Alicia's arm. With a quick, practiced motion, she reached out and pinched the line shut. Then, with her other hand, she tore the sedative bag off the hook. She didn't just stop it, she disconnected it. She threw the half-empty bag of poison into the red biohazard bin on the floor. "What did you just do?" I asked. Tiana turned to me. Her face was calm. "That," she said, pointing to the bin, "was a heavy drip of propofol mix. Doctor, Alan had her on a dose strong enough to keep a horse asleep, but it metabolizes fast. She was faking the depth of the coma, but the drugs were definitely real. She was a willing participant." She looked at her watch, a simple, practical, plastic watch. "Without the drip, the last of it will wear off completely in about 30 seconds. The room went silent. 30 seconds. We all just stood there. Me, Larry, the 2 security guards, Tiana. We watched the bed. 10 seconds. The only sound was the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor. It sounded faster now. 20 seconds. Alicia's face was still. The tear track had dried on her cheek. 25 seconds, and then her eyelids trembled. It was real this time, not a voluntary tightening, but an involuntary, drug-addled flutter. Her fingers, which had been perfectly still, twitched against the white sheet. The brainwave monitors began to change their rhythm, the pattern becoming sharper, faster. "Here we go," Tiana whispered. Alicia's head moved on the pillow, just a small, restless turn. A soft moan escaped her lips, a real one, a sound of someone surfacing from a deep, dark place. Slowly, sluggishly, as the fog of the drugs lifted, my daughter, my only child, opened her eyes. She blinked once, twice. She saw the ceiling. She saw the IV pole. And then she saw me. She saw her father standing at the foot of her bed, not crying, not broken. She saw me flanked by a lawyer and 2 security guards. She saw my face, and she knew the game was over. Her eyes blinked, once, twice. They were unfocused, milky with the residue of the drugs. She let out a soft groan, and her head rolled on the pillow. She looked at the ceiling, at the white perforated tiles. She looked at the empty IV pole next to her bed, confused, as if she didn't know why the bag was gone. And then she turned her head and saw me. She froze. Her breath hitched. Her eyes, still cloudy, widened as they tried to focus. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was a dry, rasping sound. "What are you?" She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. Her gaze drifted from my face to Larry Hayes, standing by the wall in his sharp suit, to Tiana standing by the door, arms crossed, and finally to the 2 broad-shouldered security guards, whose uniforms seemed to suck all the light out of the room. The fog in her eyes evaporated. It was replaced by a dawning, terrible, white-hot clarity. She saw the trap. She saw the cage. She saw that the game was over. Her face, which a second ago was groggy and confused, crumpled. It became the face of a cornered animal. The mask of the loving daughter was gone. The mask of the comatose victim was gone. This was her. This was the real Alicia, and she was terrifying. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She attacked. Her survival instinct was to find someone else to blame. "He did it!" she shrieked. The sound was so sudden, so violent, it made the security guards jump. She pointed a shaking finger, not at me, but at the empty doorway where Greg had been dragged away. "Greg, it was all Greg. He made me do it. He made me!" She ripped the heart monitor sensors from her chest. The machines beside her bed screamed a frantic, high-pitched alarm. "Dad!" she screamed at me, her eyes wild with a new, desperate performance. "Dad, please, you have to listen to me. He forced me." She started to cry. But these weren't the quiet tears of shame. They were loud, gulping, theatrical sobs, tears for an audience, tears of a liar who had been caught. He said he would hurt me," she cried, pushing herself up on her elbows. "He said he had gambling debts. He said they would come after me if he didn't get the money. He said this was the only way." When I just stood there, didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her, she kept building the new lie. "He put the sedatives in my coffee," she screamed, her voice cracking. "He told me it was just a game, that it was a prank to get back at Dr. Nine. Alan, I didn't know. I didn't know about the money. I swear I didn't." Larry Hayes took one step forward. His voice was quiet, but it sliced through her hysteria like a scalpel. "That's a very compelling story, Miss Reed," he said. "Unfortunately for you, we have the audio." Alicia's head snapped toward him. "Audio? What audio? He's lying." "Am I?" Larry said. He tapped the screen of his tablet. and her own voice filled the room. Alicia's voice. "Did the old man sell the house yet?" Greg's voice. "Not yet, baby, but he will." Alicia's voice. "Good. Because $100,000 isn't enough, Greg. It's not enough to fix your gambling debts." Alicia's face went perfectly, horribly white. The performance stopped. The sobs caught in her throat. She stared at the tablet as if it were a snake. The audio continued. Greg's voice. "After he signs, tragically you'll have a complication. We'll have to pull the plug." Alicia's voice. "And the old man?" Greg's voice. "He'll be so broken he won't even notice when we put him in a nice cheap nursing home, and everything will be ours." Larry stopped the recording. The silence in the room was heavier, more terrible than any scream. Alicia looked at me. Her face was a ruin. The cunning was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was a raw, pathetic desperation. She slid off the side of the bed, her legs tangling in the hospital gown. She landed on her knees on the cold tile floor. "Daddy." She whimpered the name she hadn't used since she was a little girl. It was like a knife in my gut. "Daddy, please, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. It was just talk. We wouldn't have really done it. Please, Daddy. I'm your little girl. I'm your Alicia. Please." She started to crawl toward me, crawling on her hands and knees, her hospital gown open in the back, dragging her IV line with her. I took one step back. The movement was small, but it was enough. It was a wall. It was the end. She stopped crawling. She looked up at me from the floor, and I finally spoke. My voice was quiet. It was empty. All the rage, all the fire, it was gone. There was nothing left but the cold, hard ash. "Don't," I said. "Don't lie anymore, Alicia. It's over." "No, Dad, please." "I heard you," I said, my voice flat. I was behind the curtain. I heard all of it. I didn't just hear the plan. I didn't just hear the greed. I leaned down just slightly so she could see my eyes. "I heard you laugh." That was the word that broke her. She let out a sound, a low, animal sound of pure despair. "I heard you," I said. "Ask your husband if the old man had sold the house yet. I heard you call me a stupid old fool who was in the way. I heard you, Alicia. I heard you." "Please, Daddy," she sobbed, clutching at the hem of my hospital gown. "I'm your family. I'm your only family. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter." I looked down at the woman clinging to my legs, this stranger, this creature of greed who wore my daughter's face. I reached down, but I didn't touch her. I pulled the fabric of my gown out of her hand. "Don't call me that," I said. The words were quiet, but they echoed in the room. "You are not my daughter. My daughter would have rather starved in the street than do this. My daughter would have protected me. My daughter would have loved me." I turned my back on her. I looked at Tiana. "Nurse Johnson. She is no longer my next of kin. She has no medical authority over me, and I have none over her." Tiana nodded. She stepped forward, and I heard a metallic sound: handcuffs. Alicia saw them. Her scream was high-pitched and terrible. No, you can't. This is a hospital. I'm a patient." "You're a flight risk, Miss Reed," Tiana said, her voice cold, "and you are a suspect in a criminal investigation. Until the police arrive to take your formal statement, you are being detained." One of the security guards stepped forward, took the cuffs from Tiana, and with practiced, impersonal efficiency, pulled Alicia's hands behind her back. Click, click, click. The sound of the ratchet locking was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Alicia collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, hysterical, cuffed. I didn't look back. I just faced the door. "Larry," I said. "I'm here, Isaiah. Let's go. I want to go home. I'm tired of this place." I walked out of the room. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I just walked. I left her there on the floor, weeping among the ruins of the life she had just destroyed. I had walked out of the room, leaving her cuffed and sobbing on the floor. I made it as far as the nurse's station, my hands shaking, my whole body humming with a terrible cold energy. Larry and Tiana were right behind me. "Isaiah," Larry said, putting a hand on my shoulder, "you need to sit down." Before I could answer, the elevator doors at the end of the hall dinged open. It wasn't the police. It was the two security guards who had dragged Greg away, and they were dragging him back. Greg was still struggling, his face a mask of fury, blood still smeared around his nose and mouth. "We can't hold him in the lobby, Mr. Hayes," one of the guards said, his voice curt. "He's causing a disturbance. The police want him secured until their transport unit arrives. Nurse Johnson, is this room secure?" He meant Alicia's room. The room I had just left. Tiana nodded. It is now. Put him in there. We'll detain them both together. My heart hammered. I had to see this. I had to see the end. The guards shoved Greg into room 408. I followed, standing in the doorway with Larry and Tiana. Greg stumbled into the room, caught his balance, and saw her. Alicia. She was still on the floor, weeping, cuffed. She looked up, her face streaked with tears and makeup the picture of pathetic defeat. Greg stared at her. His rage, which had been aimed at me, now found a new target. You. He spat at her, the word heavy with venom. Alicia scrambled backward on the floor like a crab, trying to get away from him. Me? She shrieked. You're the one who got caught. You're the one who lost his temper. I lost my temper? He roared. He stalked toward her. I've been handling everything for weeks, while you just lay there like a princess. All you had to do was keep the old man calm. All you had to do was watch him. He wasn't calm, she screamed back. She used the bed rail to pull herself to her feet, the metal cuffs rattling behind her. He knew. He came in here and he knew. You scared him off, you idiot. You and your stupid, greedy impatience. My impatience? Greg laughed a horrible, choking sound. I'm the one who's been patiently listening to you whine about how we didn't have enough. It's just a house, Greg. It's not enough. I want the investments too. That's a lie. Is it? He sneered. I just wanted to pay off my debts. You were the one who wanted the whole thing. You were the one who found Dr. Allen. You were the one who came up with the experimental treatment crap. I just wanted the house. You were the one who had to have all of it. So it was her, I thought. The gambling debt was Greg's, but the master plan, the cold, cruel medical part, that was my daughter. Alicia's face twisted. You're blaming me? You're the one who's been stealing from him for 5 years and you barely got $50,000. You couldn't even rob him right. You are a pathetic amateur. I had to come up with a real plan to get the real money, so you admit it. Larry's voice was quiet, but it landed like a hammer blow. They both froze. They had forgotten we were there. They had forgotten their audience. In their rage, in their pathetic need to blame each other, they had just delivered a full, detailed confession. They turned 2 rabid animals caught in the same snare, and they saw us. Me, Larry, Tiana, the 2 guards, all just standing there watching. The realization hit them at the same time. They hadn't just been caught. They had just convicted themselves. Alicia's face crumpled. She understood it was over. But Greg's face went from white to a deep, blotchy purple. He looked past Larry, past Tiana, past the guards. He looked right at me. He was pinned, held by both arms. He was defeated. He had nothing left. Nothing but hate. You, he whispered, the rage now concentrated into a deadly poison. You old man. You just couldn't die, could you? You just had to hold on. You had to play your games. It's over, Mr. Reed, Larry said, stepping forward. Over? Greg laughed, a choking, wet gurgle from his broken nose. He strained against the guards, his eyes fixed on me, bulging with hate. This isn't over. You'll regret this, Isaiah. You think you've won? You think you're smart? He spat a wad of blood and saliva onto the clean white floor. You're a fool. Look what you did. You just sent your only child to prison. Your only family. Who's going to take care of you now? Who's going to visit you when you're actually senile and drooling in a home? He was breathing hard, his whole body shaking a trapped animal. You're going to die alone. You hear me? You're going to die a lonely, miserable old man rattling around in that dusty house with nothing but your money. He took a deep, shuddering breath and screamed the last words, the final curse so loud that nurses down the hall flinched. You have nobody. You have nothing. I let his words hang in the air. I let his curse echo in the sterile room. Nothing, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his screaming. He stopped, mouth open, breathing hard. You think I have nothing? I looked at him, really looked at him, at this pathetic, bleeding man. And then I looked at my daughter, who was a cuffed, weeping mess on the floor. You risked everything for this, I said, my voice heavy with a terrible pity. You murdered your own souls. You lied. You conspired. You planned to put me away forever. And you did it all for $250,000. I shook my head slowly. All that evil, all that betrayal for scraps, for the price of a small condo. Greg just stared at me, his face slick with blood and confusion. What are you talking about, old man? I didn't answer him. I just turned my head slightly. Larry Hayes, who had been watching this all unfold, nodded once. He stepped forward, pulling a single crisp piece of paper from his briefcase. He didn't look at Greg or Alicia. He looked at the paper as if he were addressing a courtroom. For the record, Larry's voice was loud, clear, and formal. I have here the most recent quarterly statement for the Covington Mildred Trust Fund. A fund, I might add, that Mr. Covington has had sole discretion over since the passing of his wife. Greg's eyes narrowed. Trust fund? What trust fund? He's a welder. Larry ignored him. He cleared his throat and read the number from the bottom line. As of the close of business yesterday, the total assets of the Covington Mildred Trust Fund, comprised of blue-chip stocks and real estate holdings, is valued at $2,247,000 and change. $2 million. The number just hung in the air. The security guards didn't move. Tiana didn't move. But Greg and Alicia, they froze. It was not a gradual realization. It was a physical blow. I watched the color drain from Greg's face. His mouth fell open. His eyes, which had been burning with rage, went glassy. They looked empty. Alicia let out a sound, a small, horrified gasp. She stopped crying. She just stared at the floor, her mind clearly replaying every decision, every lie, every stupid, greedy calculation that had led her to this moment. They had it all. They were my only heirs. They had it all, and they had thrown it away. They had sold their entire future, their freedom, their family for a fraction of what they would have been given. I looked at Greg, at his broken, bleeding face. My wife Mildred was right, I said, my voice quiet again. She always said, Isaiah, money poisons people. I just never believed it could poison our own. I looked at my daughter, my child, the stranger on the floor. You did all this for nothing. You sold your souls for pennies. I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't need to see them anymore. Enjoy your 7 to 10 years in prison, I said, without looking back. That's all the inheritance you're ever going to get from me. I walked out into the hallway, leaving them in the silent, ruined wreckage of their lives. 6 months passed. The trial was a blur, but it was fast. Larry said he'd never had an easier case. Between Tiana's sworn testimony, the hospital security footage of Greg's assault, and the USB drive, that damning, horrible recording, they didn't stand a chance. They tried to turn on each other, of course. Alicia's lawyer argued she was a victim of Greg's coercion, a terrified wife trapped in a bad marriage. Greg's lawyer argued Alicia was the mastermind, the greedy, ambitious daughter who had manipulated him. In the end, it didn't matter. The recording told the truth. It told the story of two predators, not one. Greg Reed was found guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted grand larceny, and felony elder abuse. The judge gave him 10 years in a state prison. He sobbed when they read the sentence. Dr. Allen's case was separate, but just as swift. He lost his medical license, his reputation, and his freedom. And Alicia, my daughter, because she testified against Greg, and because she was a first-time offender, the judge showed her a sliver of mercy. She was sentenced to 7 years. I watched them lead her away in handcuffs. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were empty. There was no remorse, no apology, only anger. Anger that she had been caught. For a month after, I just sat in the old house, the house Mildred and I had built. But it wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. Every corner held a bad memory. The kitchen where I took that phone call, the living room where Greg had lied to me, the bedroom where I had listened to their plans. I called a realtor. I sold the house. I sold the workshop. I sold the tools, the land, everything. It wasn't sad. It felt like a cleansing, like finally closing a painful book. I stood in Larry's office with a check in my hand for the sale, and I looked at the other statement on his desk, the $2, $2 million. The money Mildred had so carefully hidden, the money that had poisoned my family. I knew what I had to do. I walked back into St. Jude's Hospital, but not as a victim. I walked in as a benefactor. I met with the hospital board, with Larry and Tiana by my side. I used every penny of that $2, $2 million, to establish the Mildred Covington Foundation. Its purpose is simple. It provides free, immediate legal aid and protective services for elderly people who are facing financial abuse from their own families. I created the weapon I wish I'd had, and the foundation needed a director, someone fierce, someone who wouldn't back down, someone who understood what it meant to fight for what was right. I offered the job to Tiana Johnson. She quit her nursing job the next day. Her daddy, Joe, would have been so proud. She's saving lives in a different way now. My new life is quiet. I didn't want a big house. I moved into a small, clean apartment downtown. I can see the city lights from my window. And I opened a new workshop, a small one in a new neighborhood. But it's not for me, it's for them. I partnered with the local community center. I teach kids how to weld, teenagers who need a trade, who need a purpose, who need someone to show them the value of building something instead of just taking it. My sister's granddaughter, Maya, comes on weekends. She's 15, and she's got the gift. She holds a steady hand. We were working last Saturday, both of us under our masks, the blue flame hissing as we ran a clean bead on a piece of steel. I shut off the torch and lifted my mask. She lifted hers. She was proud of the weld. It was strong. "Grandpa," she asked, her voice soft. My mom told me what happened with Alicia. Was she just a bad person? I put my welder down. I looked at this girl, this new generation. She wasn't born bad, baby girl, I told her. She just made a terrible choice. She forgot what's important. She started to believe that money was the same thing as value. I tapped the steel sculpture we were working on. It was a bird, just like the one I was making for her aunt all those years ago. Your grandmother Mildred, she taught me something. The value of a person isn't in what they have. It's not in what they can buy or what they can steal. What is it then? Maya asked. I smiled. I picked up my mask. It's in what they can build, I said. With their own two hands, something strong, something honest, something that lasts. I lowered my mask. She lowered hers. And we got back to work. If this whole nightmare taught me one thing, it's this. Greed is a poison. It doesn't just make people do bad things. It turns them into strangers. It rots a family from the inside out. My daughter and her husband looked at me, but they didn't see a father. They saw a bank account. They saw an obstacle. They forgot that the only inheritance that truly matters isn't money or property. It's the respect you earn and the love you give. They sold their souls for scraps, and in the end, they lost everything, while I found a new purpose in what I built. Thank you for listening to my story. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? How do you think true family should be defined? I want to know what you think.